Hey everyone, this is Brian, and I'm here with my new segment that I'd like to call Movies of the Month. And I'm starting off with a personal favorite of mine, and I think it's a personal favorite of everybody's, which is Transformers the movie, which was made in 1986, released in 1986 in theaters everywhere. And I'll tell you honestly, when I first heard about this coming out in the theaters, I was excited. I mean, when they first showed the commercial, I was just jumping up and down at the time, because I think around 1986 I was about 7 years old when this came out. 7 years old, so I was excited, happy about it. Unfortunately, I had to wait till it came out on VHS to see it. And when it came out to VHS, my parents made sure, because we used to go to rent videos or VHS tapes over at a place called Neighborhood Video in Hayward, California. And we saw the promo, or the poster, the coming soon poster for the movie, being released on VHS, and they actually reserved it for me, and we all saw it as a family, thought it was pretty good. My mom, I think, kind of was surprised at how violent it was, or how much, not blood and guts and all that, but basically the violent content, how high it was. But overall, it was a good movie, for all of us to watch. And personally, for me, I just enjoyed it, and I've watched it every time I've gotten a chance to see it. I would watch it, and according to my sisters, I've watched it over 1 million times, so I know just about every line in there or every scene. But yeah, this is definitely a good movie that if you want to watch something the entire month to keep you busy, if you don't got anything else to watch, I suggest if you have this movie to watch it, to sit down and enjoy it. It's a good movie. If you've seen it, like I said, like myself, over 1 million times, I suggest you just watch it again. You might be surprised about what you see in there. It's just a great movie and a good selection for Movie of the Month. And if you got the 20th anniversary edition like I do, or this and the Rhino version, I suggest you put this one in there and save the Rhino for a backup, if you know what I'm saying. But overall, that's all I have to say about my movie of the month, which is Transformers the movie, the original one, released in 1986. And if you got any comments, let me know, and I will get back to you all later. This is Brian signing off, saying God bless you and take care. Hey everyone, Brian here. Now, I showed you my Transformers collection so far, with the DVDs and the figures, and of course I should have showed you the soundtracks, this one and the original soundtrack release of the same soundtrack. But one thing I want to talk about, though, right off the bat, is, I was listening to the fan commentary on Disc 1, and I was listening to the featurette of the death of Optimus Prime and what they had to say on that. And it got me to thinking, if it wasn't for what we heard about parents, and I don't mean to be mean or anything, but if it wasn't for the parents, or whoever took you to go see the film in the theaters, if it wasn't for them dragging you out, writing the letters, probably asking for refunds, this film would have been more successful than we thought. I mean, I understand. Honestly, I understand why parents did it. Why parents left the theaters with the kids, even if they had to drag them out or carry them, and the kids all this time at the same time as crying and bitching and moaning and just throwing a tantrum of a fit because you're taking them out of the favorite movie, taking them away from the movie they've always been wanting to see. I understand that. If you kind of turn back time, if you make this 2009 into 1986, let's say this is 1986, and there is no PG-13 like there wasn't any back then, and you took your kid or your niece or your nephew and their friends or whoever to go see the film because it had the PG rating. You think it's probably not going to be that bad. It might have some, the violence that we've probably seen in the show might be turned up just a little bit, but not much. And all of a sudden you go in there and what you see is a lot worse and a lot more violent than you expect. well, then of course you would have to understand where, you know, where your parents or your aunts or your uncles, whoever took you there to see the film, you know, felt. I mean, I'm pretty sure the people at Sunbow and Marvel, and as well as DEG Films, or Pictures or Productions, whoever released them, probably when they heard about what was going on in the theaters across the country, probably realized to themselves, oops, you know, we made a mistake. You know, we know that we were supposed to bring in the new toy line and everything for this, you know, because of this film, and that was the only reason the film was made, basically, to introduce the new toy line. They probably thinking, you know, maybe we could have just done better with a miniseries or something, but no, that's not how it worked, and but you know, and basically, you know, I can just imagine how they felt. They probably had a lot of egg on their face, if you know what I mean. They're probably thinking, man, did we blow it big time? You know, here we're trying to, you know, bring everyone's favorite toy, you know, to the big screen, like we did with My Little Ponies, which of course had a G rating. It was more of a musical in the following terms of like a Disney film or the recent Care Bear franchise at the time. You probably think you know, they probably thought to themselves, you know, man, you know, we're just trying to do our jobs. We didn't think we were going to get this much, you know, flack for it. I mean, I could just imagine the offices, the phones ringing off the hook, going bring, hello, and the people calling up saying, hello, you know, Sunbow, Marvel, how can we help you? And have the parent, whoever is upset about what they saw in the theater, going, you know, how dare you? How dare you put on a film based on a toy series and a cartoon series and make it that violent? How dare you? You know, I could just imagine how they felt saying, one secretary saying, let me connect you to Joe McCall. Let me connect you to Tom Griffin, Nelson Shin, Flint Dilley. Let me connect you to all these people. And I could just imagine how they felt when they got the phone calls and the messages with the same thing. With parents probably saying, with the parents saying the same thing, like, how dare you do this? How dare you do this? We want that movie out of the theaters right now. Blah 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 blah. And to me, it was because of reasons like that. And I know it probably didn't just make sense right now, but to me, it's reasons like that this film didn't last. Not just didn't last, but didn't succeed. I mean, because it had a great story, despite what you may think about it, or how you feel. It had a great story. It had great animation. I mean, what more can you ask for? Yes, it was basically an 85 to 90 minute toy commercial. Duh, we all know that. I mean, but how else are you going to do it sometimes? I mean, take a look at the My Little Ponies and the Care Bears. When the Care Bears first came out, it was just bears. They used the Care Bear movie to introduce the Care Bear cousins, and that was a toy. Take a look at My Little Ponies. Most of the ponies you saw in there, some of them are brand new, and they used that film to introduce them, right? That's basically what those were. They were toy films, just like Transformers. They were basically 85 to 90 minute commercials. That's it. But the parents back then, or whoever took the kids, or whoever, if you were lucky enough to see it in the theaters, if it wasn't for them, you know, this film would be a success. Would have been a success. There's no doubt about it. But like I said, you know, you gotta come to the understanding of how they felt. I mean, because here you are, because if you put yourself in their place now, where there is no PG-13, which there is, but wasn't back then, and all of a sudden you're watching a movie based on your kids or your niece and nephew's favorite show or favorite cartoon, and all of a sudden you see all the favorite characters getting killed off in the first 5 to 7 to 30 minutes. And basically saying, you know, that's enough, you know, I don't want to see anymore. And you see probably your kid or your niece and nephew crying and saying, oh, why are they killing them? What's going on? And you're saying, that's it, you know, I'm out of here. I mean, with you doing that, and probably going up to people and say, hey, I want my money back. That movie's way too violent. It shouldn't be in the theaters. Because of you doing that, you're not only taking your child away, even if they are upset at the characters dying, not only are you taking them away from the movie they've been wanting to see for a long time, but you're also ruining the movie's success, or the movie's chances at success. And I think that's what happened, when parents took the kids out of theaters after Optimus Prime died, or after they took them out after the first four Autobot deaths. That's what they did. They basically ruined the film by probably asking for refunds, writing in letters, and everything, and phone calls, and you name it. But again, in closing, I believe that this film, if that wouldn't have happened, if those stories that we've heard of wouldn't have come to life and wouldn't be true, this film would have been a success, would have been more successful back then than probably any animated feature that year. And that's all I have to say. If you got any comments or your own stories on it, or your own reply on it, just let me know, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Till then, peace.
Well, that's a little too up close. Sorry about that.
There we go.
I don't know if you'll be able to see me, but if not, I apologize. But I thought I'd kind of pose a question to a lot of you. It's a question that I'm pretty sure a lot of you may, you can see it up there. It's just a question I'd like to have video responses on. And again, if you can't see me, I apologize for that. But mainly the focus is on this, Transformers the movie, the 1986 film. And as you can see, this is the 20th anniversary edition. The 2-disc deal with full screen and widescreen, if you will. But I have a question about this for anybody watching. When did you first see it? For myself, to answer that question, I saw it when it first came out on VHS. I remember specifically going into what was known as neighborhood video in Hayward, California, and they had this writing board, this marker board, this white marker board, and on it was a list of all the movies that were coming soon, and it said Transformers the movie coming at a certain time. And I basically asked my parents to please reserve it when it came out, and they did, and we got it the first day, and we rented it the first day it was out, watched it, and I thought it was pretty good. For my mom, it kind of caught her a little off guard, like it did a lot of parents, especially mothers, if you will, because of the violence. So, but I saw it after that, and then there were numerous times I rented the movie over and over and over and over again, and watched it and watched it and watched it, to the point that when it came on Saturday mornings one time, when it came on Saturday mornings, I remember watching the movie. I remember reading the TV guide, and normally at 9 o'clock a.m. on KBHK, or whatever channel it was, mainly for me in the Bay Area it was KBHK, it would say Transformers. Now normally after that it would say something else for the 9:30 hour, and the 10 o'clock for the 9:30 slot, 10 o'clock slot, and 10:30. But sometimes it would say Transformers 9 at 9 o'clock, and then wouldn't say anything new, and wouldn't show anything else coming on that channel until about 11 o'clock, which assumingly would tell me right there was the movie they were showing. So I got to watch it many times through that, and then my mom let me one day record it on television because it had been advertised it was going to come on Saturday morning. It was going to come on Saturday morning or something like that. I think it was advertised, or I may have read a TV guide or something like that, knowing what it was going to be. So she let me record it on VHS. The VHS takers in Kansas probably warped to death by now. But yeah, I've watched it, according to my sisters, numerous times, many, many times, to the point that I know almost every line and every scene. And when it and one time I went to the mall in Topeka, Kansas, and I saw one of the stores. I think it was, I can't think of the name right now. It was some kind of music entertainment store within the mall. It was the Westbridge Mall. I can't think of it right now. But I saw the VHS, and when I had the money, I was able to get it. I was able to get the VHS movie. And then what was even more funny was that we went to, I think it was a Barnes & Noble right next to the Hypermart in Topeka, Kansas. And in the Barnes & Noble was the original, I kid you not, original soundtrack. And I got that as well, thanks to my grandma, I believe. I got that as well. So, yeah, I was able to get the movie on VHS when it came out for the first time by Rhino. And then later on, I got the soundtrack. The original soundtrack, not the 20th anniversary edition, which I also have. Yeah, I do have the 20th anniversary edition of the soundtrack along with this. And when I found out it was coming out on DVD, I also got the Rhino version, which was uncut and everything, remastered uncut. I got the Rhino edition, and then when I found out Sony was bringing out this, I got this as well. And what was funny is I got this about the first week, the first few nights, or the first few nights, a week or so. I was working at Walmart in Lawrence, Kansas. I waited for midnight, and usually that's when they bring out all the stuff. And one of the managers, who was actually nice to me at first, one of the first managers I had, went to the back and got this for me. This is actually out of the back area, so that was pretty cool to get it. They actually had to activate the whole entire thing, but yeah, it was pretty cool to get that right off the bat, the day it was released. And I've watched it many times. I've made DVD fab copies for this for my cousin's husband and their family. I've sent, I bought a copy for my nephew for his birthday. So overall, I've really gotten a lot out of this movie, and it's one of the best ones I've seen. And then when I heard it was coming on the Hub a few months ago, I watched it. I watched it on the Hub. So yeah, again, to me watching this was just, it's always a pleasure, and I just really enjoy it. But again, you know, I remember when it first came out. I remember actually when it was being advertised, I wanted to go see it in the theaters, but my parents thought, well, you're too young right now, Brian, to go see it in the theaters or even the drive-in. So again, that's when we waited till it came out on VHS, and we got the VHS, rented it and everything. But yeah, it really I'll tell you this, like I said, it caught my mom off guard. It caught my dad a little off guard, not really. My sisters were a little surprised by it, by the violence and everything, but hey, it's Transformers, what else do you expect? It ain't no My Little Pony. But yeah, I remember my first reaction was, wow. You know, as soon as the music hit, it was like, oh my God, here we go. You know, I just couldn't believe it. I just loved watching it, and it was tremendous. It was fun. It's still great to watch. And again, my first reaction was, I love watching. My first reaction was, I couldn't believe it, because here was the thing, though. Here was the thing. I didn't know what had happened in the movie. All I knew is something had happened to Prime. He had died, basically. I think that's what I heard when I saw the third season before I saw the movie. So there you go. But yeah, I do. But yeah, you know, definitely that was my first reaction. Like when I saw the third season, it's like, what happened? Oh, I got to see the movie because I got to find out what happened. Eventually, I did. But again, I've enjoyed it many, many times. And now with surround sound, it's like, wow. You know, you can't get any better than that. But again, my first initial reaction was I was happy, I was in awe. Again, my parents' reaction, my mom's was like a little caught off guard. My dad was all right with it. My sister's a little off guard. But again, you know, my first but the things that's the first time I saw it. The first time I knew about it, again, probably like a lot of people, was when it was being advertised after a commercial and everything. At times, and during the time they were airing Transformers on television, was the only time I'd heard about the movie was coming out to theaters. And I also remember when they premiered, when the Touch video first came on MTV. I remember I was in another room, and my mom said, "Brian, come here," because she was switching through the channels. I went over there, and there was the Touch, the Transformers music video, and I was like, I just sat there and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it. You know, I was just happy I saw that. So. But yeah, those were my initial reactions, my first initial reactions to the movie, and my family's reactions too. So my question to you, anybody out there, Alpha Omega Sin, the Brad Rules, anybody, MJ Knight, what was your first reactions to Transformers the movie when you first saw it? What was your initial first reactions, and what was your family's? Let me know down below. Talk to y'all later. Comments are welcome too. Video response if you like as well.
Hey, afternoon, everybody. TGIF to all of you. It is the 24th of January, 2014. You know, about a day or two ago, about 2 days ago, if you will, I did a very lengthy, as Sean McLean Zaranizrak pointed out, I did a very lengthy, about 50 minutes, something like that, audio video on my personal experience of being a fan of 30 years of Transformers, basically literally growing up with the franchise, if you know what I mean. But speaking of 30 years, I want to talk about something that is going to be celebrating 30 years. But it won't be celebrating 30 years until at least next year and going into 2016. And of course I'm talking about what you see on the screen right in front of you, Transformers the movie. Now, as I mentioned in that very lengthy video, I have seen Transformers, as my sisters have pointed out to me, my two older sisters have pointed out to me. I've seen Transformers the movie probably over 1 billion times and know probably more, and probably know every single line there is. And counting today, you could probably add another, and counting today, watching some of it, you could probably add, basically watching the first 30 minutes of it so far today, you could probably add that to the over 1 billion times that I've seen this movie, according to my relatives and mostly my sisters. But anyway, I also mentioned in that video that I bought and have different, basically I have different media versions of Transformers the movie. I recorded it back in the 89, 90 when me and my family lived in Fremont on Tamayo Street on a Saturday morning. I bought the VHS not once but twice. I'm not lying, and I'm not lying when I say this. One of the VHSs I bought, and I don't know if I have it here somewhere or I left it in Kansas, but one of the VHSs I bought was the actual European UK version. Yeah, the Rhino Entertainment had released the UK version to us. I don't know how that happened, but they did. And I also got the special collector's VHS, which is the uncut version, which was also released by Rhino Entertainment. I also got the special collector's DVD, which was released by Rhino Entertainment. And then later on, I got the 20th anniversary DVD released by Sony with the lithograph, if you will, the little lithograph, I guess you call it. And I got that at a midnight release when I worked for Walmart. All in all, I have had different versions of the Transformers movie. I even have the original Marvel Comics adaptation of Transformers the movie, as well as the IDW, I think it's IDW, or Dreamwave, which one it is. It's one of the two. IDW, I believe. I'm not really sure. Adaptation of Transformers the movie, as well in both in comic book form. The Marvel one and the IDW one. And hopefully, as of right now, depending on my financial situation, or even depending on that, this is going to be one of the movies I get through Amazon.com, courtesy of the Transformers Specialist. I am going to be getting the region-free, you heard me right, region-free Transformers the movie 1986 Blu-ray. That's right. I am hopefully it'll still be available by the time I get it, and it won't go up in price. But yeah, that's my plan as of right now. Depending on what happens financially, depending on whether or not, and I may have to take out a few items out of my cart and put them in the saved section of my Amazon account. I do plan to get Transformers the movie region-free Blu-ray. The only thing I've heard and understood about this Blu-ray by which is distributed by Madman Entertainment, is that even though the movie is region-free, the extras are not. Man, that's fine. It's no big deal. I have a DVD fab, but I don't have no Blu-ray drive, so that's the only bitch of it. Excuse my language, Lord. But yeah, that's the only bad thing about it. But overall, people have said the Blu-ray looks very good. So I'm looking forward to adding that to my collection. But anyway, getting back to Transformers the movie by itself. I explained in my lengthy video yesterday, or the other day, of how I wanted to see it in the theaters. Of how I reacted and how happy I was that it was coming to theaters. And how much I wanted to go to the theaters and see it. But it couldn't. Because, well, being 7 years old, I was still very hyperactive. And at that time, if you listen to the fan commentary on the 20th anniversary edition, even though the movie was rated PG, PG was basically meant you can get away with just about anything in a movie. You can get away with killing, you can get away with violence, you can get away with swearing a little bit more than usual. You could just basically get away with a lot more in PG back then than what you can now. I mean, heck, a lot of people look at PG as being almost the new equivalent of G at times. I'm not lying. It's like all you have to do is have some rude humor and some fart jokes or whatever, and you get the PG seal of approval. Anyway, back then PG was basically equivalent of both PG and PG-13. So it covered all the bases. But the reason for this video, to get to the point, when I listen to the fan commentary and even the filmmaker director commentary, if you will, you basically get the same kind of response after certain scenes go by. One person said on the fan commentary that after the killing of the Autobots, Ironhide, Ratchet, Prowl, and Brawn, that after the killing of those characters, and of course after the brutal execution, if you know, blowing up of Ironhide by Megatron, according to one of the people on the fan commentary, from what they heard and understood, a lot of the parents took their kids, who were Transformer fans as well, and they were gone. They were out of the theaters. And I think that was also confirmed later on with the kind of like the filmmaker, the director commentary. I think that's what it's called. Let me look at it right now. Yeah, director, story consultant, voice commentary, if you will. But yeah, that's basically what they said. That the fans said, in the fan commentary, they said after the execution, the killing of the Autobots on the shuttle, you know, a lot of parents took the kids and they were gone. The same could be said by the director, Nelson Shin, Flint Dilley, and Susan Blue, that after the death of Optimus Prime, a lot of people did the same thing. They left. And the reason being is because Transformers the movie caught a lot of people off guard. In fact, as a matter of fact, according to the fan commentary, it basically changed the way a lot of people would present their animated movies, whether or not the animated movie was based on a show, on a franchise or an animated show or not, it basically changed the way things were seen. It changed the way things were seen. And like I said in my video, my audio video a couple days ago, it was probably a smart move on my parents' part to not take a hyperactive 7-year-old to the theaters to see this movie and just literally see his favorite Autobots, his favorite characters, get slaughtered in front of his eyes. Probably the best idea. Because later on, when I saw the VHS for the first time, like I said in the video, I loved it, I enjoyed it, but my mom, I could tell from what I understood, was taken aback a little bit by how much violence was in the movie. By how much violence was in the movie, and even at the time, the only swearing they had, which was damn. And that was it. But she was obviously taken aback by the violence. So my question I'm posing to you guys, and Sean McLean, Zara Nizarak, I'd love to hear from you on this, is what was your family's first initial reaction when they, along with you, first saw Transformers the movie? What was you and your family's first initial reaction? What was your thoughts on it overall? What was your reactions when you first saw it either in theaters or for the first time on VHS? What was your initial reaction, and more importantly, what was your family's initial reaction? Because I could tell you, like I said, even though I have seen, according to my sister, this movie 1 billion times plus today, even though it's only 30 minutes of it, I still go back, and my mom, I could tell you this, even though she let me watch it a lot of times because it was Transformers, like I can obviously recall, I don't know why, that she was taken back by the violence. She was. I think she even told my nephew Andrew a couple years ago, because my nephew Andrew took me for my birthday to go see Transformers Dark of the Moon. For my birthday at the Regal Theaters in Modesto. And she told my nephew that, yeah, your uncle cried. And I don't know if I cried or not, but I think I hid my head in a big gray pillow I used to have. But I definitely hid my head a little bit when Prime died. I will say that I hid my face. I didn't cry, but I hid my face. It's like, I don't want to see this. I don't want to see it, honestly. But yeah, I think she even told him, I'm not really sure, I think she even told him that she was kind of taken aback a little bit of how violent it was. Because here is a show that I would come home and watch after school, or she would let me watch because, obviously being at the age I was, she didn't want to take any chances with me being outside, and, with things the way they were at times, you never knew. So anyway, she basically said she was taken aback by it because he, again, like I said, he was a show that I grew up on watching after school, and all of a sudden here's the movie, and the movie's way different and way more violent than anything she could ever expect. So again, I pose the question to all of you, Sean McLean, those here at the Transformer Group Faceboards, Comic Book Issues Faceboard, Animation Films, Zara Nizarak again, Sean McLean, MJ Knight. I pose the question to you guys: what was your family's first initial reaction, and what was your first initial reaction to Transformers the movie when you first saw it? So that's all I'm asking. I told you what mine was, and let me know what you guys think down below. Comment if you like. And that's all I'm going to say. But let me know what your first initial reaction was, and or maybe what your family's first initial reaction was, or anybody that you know of. What was their first reaction to the movie? Hey, everybody.
I was watching, just kind of rewatching some of what Zernizerike did with his Transformers videos. Where he talked about basically when he did a lot of these multi-part ones, and I know he hasn't gotten yet to the Shout Factory versions or even what I have here in the movies. But I thought I'd kind of give a little background though on my history as far as like say the Family Home Entertainment VHSs and the Kid Rhino ones go. Yeah, just get that in position. But as far as the Kid Rhino ones go, and first of all, the Family Home Entertainment ones, as a kid, I would always want to get. And I'm sorry for the car alarm in the background, I don't know whose it is. But I always liked them. Every time me and my family went to a video store, the one video I would always want to rent is a Transformers VHS. So, and this was at the time when they still had, like you showed, Sean, the big boxes of VHS boxes. So I had those in my collection. I had those in my collection. Well, not in my collection, but I had those. I should say, I had those to rent, when I could. But sometimes they'd be in, and sometimes they wouldn't be in. Because you got to imagine, like you said at that time, VHSs, the Transformer VHSs would fly off the shelf. So when I could get one, I would, and I couldn't, I wouldn't. Anyway, later on, as you mentioned, I think, they re-released them. Just checking to see whether there's a truck going by there. Because I thought that could have been my brother-in-law. But anyway, they re-released them, as you said, in these little, same artwork and everything, but they were smaller, more compact-sized VHS cases that normally you would see from that time forward. So anyway, my cousin had, not the big ones, but he had the gray ones. And I would borrow them at times to watch and take them back to him and all that. And I've always wanted to have them. So one day, not one day, but one Christmas, I think it was 89, 90 or something like that, I think it was 89. One Christmas, we were living down the road in Waterford, California, me and my family. And here was the unique thing about my family. Even though we lived in Waterford, and some of my cousins and relatives lived in Tracy, we would all still go down to Hayward. We would all still go down to Hayward, California, to my grandparents and do a gift exchange. Nowadays, with our families spread out all over the place, and so we do gift exchange within the family and then just take the gifts and do the gift exchange on Christmas. But the thing was, back then, we would do a gift exchange at my grandparents in Hayward, California. So one day, on that gift exchange, basically what the parents do, because I was at an age still, and I'm not going to deny this, that I was at an age still, and I'm not going to deny this, where I still believed in the jolly bearded man, the jolly white bearded man in the red suit. If you know what I mean. I still believed, and still do, for the benefit of the kids in my family. But you get the idea when I say still believed at that moment in 1989. So I still believed at that time. And I think my sisters were kind of getting wise to the truth behind the jolly white bearded man in the red suit. And I was getting close to it, I just didn't acknowledge it yet. But again, like I said, my older sister was pretty much had an idea, pretty much knew the truth, and I think my second older sister was getting towards that time as well. But anyway, being 10, I still believed. I still believed, and still do for the benefit of the kids, my nephews and great-nephews. But anyway, still believed. And through the magic of Christmas, if you will, the next day after basically with any gift exchange, the gifts would always be exchanged, put in little bags, taken to the cars, and we would take them home. Well, through the magic of Christmas, one day, not through the magic of Christmas, but the following day on that Christmas morning, I should say, we went into the living room, because we just lived in, it was a new house, fairly new house we lived in, and we went into the living room. I remember this very well. We went into the living room, and we saw all the presents that were around. And one of the presents I saw for me was stacked up like this. It was stacked up like this. And I kind of had an idea, but I wasn't sure. But I felt, and I'm thinking, it can't be. But I kind of had an idea, but I didn't. And it said to me from Santa. So I was a kid back then, like I said, and I still believed in the magic, if you will. So I looked around. And I looked around, but I looked at it more closely, and I decided finally to open it up. And I think it was one of the first ones I opened up. And lo and behold, through the magic of Christmas, if you will, I obtained the three VHS Transformer tapes that my cousin had. Basically, the gray box re-release of the same volumes that you talked about from the big boxes. So I was so happy to get those, and I constantly watched them. I really did. Unfortunately, as time went on, they suffered some damage. I think maybe there's one left in good condition, but it's just a cassette, and I think it's in Kansas. But the rest, suffered, and I don't know what happened. I don't know if they're still in good condition. I don't know what happened. They just went out the window. The benefit, though, the silver lining, though, is I now have the Rhinomation and the Shout Factory releases of G1. So thank God for that. And speaking of VHSs, though, as you mentioned in the early 99s and 2000s, Kid Rhino would bring out re-releases of the VHSs, and some of them would be of the episodes we had before, thanks to courtesy of Family Home Entertainment, but others would be of releases that we had not had. Now, speaking of Family Home Entertainment, kind of a short story here. When I went back and lived with my dad in Kansas in '94, one of the first VHS tapes I recorded, or copied, if you will, was Return of Optimus Prime. I'm not lying. Me and my dad on occasions would go to Topeka, Kansas. We lived in Oskaloosa, but on occasions we would go to Topeka, do a little shopping, like for groceries and all that, and we'd stop into the Blockbuster there. So I remember every time I would go into a Blockbuster, the first section I'd go to would either be the sports section, the special interest section, which would have WWE or WWF or WCW stuff, or I would go around into the cartoon section, the kids' family section. And I remember going into the kid family section one day, and I looked down, because I would go alphabetically to see what they had, and I would look down, and lo and behold, I saw Return of Optimus Prime, and I rented it. And then, of course, we had a video store in town that allowed you to rent VCRs. So I rented a VCR, and within that time that I rented that VHS, I recorded or copied Return of Optimus Prime to my own VHS copy. So there you go. But again, I don't know I think that VHS that I copied it on is in Kansas still. But thankfully, thanks to a DVD, if you will, Rhino and Shout Factory, I don't have to worry about that right now. But anyway, that's what I did. That's what I did. And then later on in '99 and mostly 2000, when I started to live on my own, what was that? Hold on for a second. Hold on, what that one? Sorry about that, Sean. Sorry about that, everybody. Someone must have slammed the door really hard. It's kind of windy outside. But anyway, like I said, when I started living on my own in 2000, I lived right next door. Well, not right next door, but basically across the way, sort of corner-wise. Like here was my apartment. Here's where I lived. And over here, across the street, in the corner section, was the Hastings. So I would go in there, and one day when I went in there, I noticed that they had Transformer VHS tapes, and they were all by Rhino. Well, actually, I figured that out basically. Well, actually, what it was, I went in there to see if they had any. I should say. Let me correct myself. I went in to see if they had any, because what happened was, me and my dad went to the mall one time, the West Ridge Mall in Topeka, Kansas. And I think we were just, we went in there, I think we were doing some shopping or something, I don't know what it was. Looking for something, I can't remember. And I remember going into, I think it was a Suncoast store. And I looked down to look at the Suncoast, and I looked around to see what they had, and I looked down, and lo and behold, as I looked down, I saw that they had Transformers the movie. And I said to myself, that's impossible. So I picked it up, and it said Kid Rhino on the side. So basically what happened is later on, my grandma, she didn't really have to do this. She was kind enough to help me out with this, and financially helped me out with this, and I was able to obtain my first VHS copy of Transformers the movie. Now, this was not the special collector's edition as far as I know, because this, when I put it in, and I don't know if this is the same way, I don't think it is, but when I put it in, it essentially had the scrolling part, that they would have for the UK. And I thought that was kind of cool. I'm thinking, oh, it has to be special edition. And like I said, I don't know if it's this one that has it, or if it was that one, but it was kind of cool. I thought it was kind of cool that they did that. So again, there goes my dog in the background. I'm sorry about that. But again, she helped me out with that. And then one day, I went to Hastings because what it had on the inside was this. Well, this is an advertisement for music and all that, but still. It had something like this, and it advertised that it had the other Transformer volumes. So I went into Hastings, but like I said, which was like here's where I lived. Here's where they were. So I went into Hastings one day. I think it was I think it was Hastings in 2000. Just to see what they had, just to see what the store was like. And I went in there, and they had Transformers the movie. They had the Transformer volumes in one section. Not all of them, but they had them. And one of the things you could do there, obviously you could do it with Amazon now, but one of the things you could do there, and you could still do, is special order them. It's like if they didn't have them, they would be able to look online, say, oh yeah, we can get it for you, special order it, there you go. And I was able to special order it. Sometimes I'd go on this little computer thing, collax machine, if you will, search for it and order it like that, or I'd have them do it for me. So I would, basically through the help of Hastings, I was able to obtain, I think probably just as much, if not probably a VHS tape more than what than what you had. So I had a nice collection of them. And I don't know if I sold them back to Hastings because of the fact that I got the Rhino DVDs, or it was the fact that I left them in Kansas and I still need to get them again. And I need to get them back, basically. But anyway, I had the VHSs. I really did. And so I was kind of happy about that. And then later on, I heard that they were bringing out a special collector's edition of the movie on VHS. And I think it was through Hastings that I bought the special collector's edition of the movie. And essentially, it's right there. And I think this is where they did the starring spot. I think this was where they did the starring and all that. I'm not too sure. I don't know if it has the scrolling or whatever it was, but it basically it was uncut. And like I said, I don't know if this is the one that has the scrolling or it was the one I had before, but it was one of them. And I was very happy to get this finally on VHS. And then later on, when I finally got my first DVD player, which was an Apex player, believe it or not, I had one of those big suckers. I finally was able to obtain it on DVD. And as you can see, the DVD and the VHS are essentially just the same cover. But the difference is, like I said, I don't know if the VHS one has the scrolling or not. The difference is, this doesn't have the scrolling. This is basically the starring and all that. It doesn't have the Star Wars-esque scrolling or anything like that. So, and of course on the inside it has the advertisement for the original soundtrack of Battle of the Planets. So that's pretty cool. Sorry about that. Let me check my time. But yeah, I basically had it in. This was basically the first one, and of course, like you said, Sean, I got it because it's completely remastered, unedited version, has storyboards, and of course, an exclusive interview with Vince DiCola, who did the music. So yeah, got both of them. And then of course, as we all know, 2006, I started working around August of 2006 for Walmart, and it was ironically around this time that they were releasing this, the 20th anniversary of Transformers the movie. And and here's the thing, I thought to myself, oh great, I hear the re-release is coming, the 20th anniversary edition is coming, it's probably going to be Rhino. Nope, it was Sony BMG Home Entertainment that released it. As you can see, I got the testicular, or whatever you want to call it, the animated little cover that if you wanted to, you could slip in there like that, and it would work. But yeah, I got it. It's a 2-disc deal. And what's funny about this, and this is not the only time, I got this during the midnight release, as you can see. So, yeah. I got that during the midnight release, and I was very, very happy about it. Other things about Transformers that I had, I originally did have Rebirth when it was, released individually onto DVD, as well as I think I had Ultimate Doom. But again, like some of the DVDs and VHSs I've done in the past, I've had to sell it back because financially I needed money at that time. But yeah. All different version, basically Transformers the movie up the wazoo, if you know what I mean. And I do mainly now watch this version right here. I mainly watch that version now. Because to me the Rhino one's good, but you always need like a backup. And the VHS one you want to have like for collectors because sooner or later you're going to go into a Walmart or somewhere and the VHS tapes to record with are going to be gone, and that's it. Because they still sell them, but eventually those are going to be gone. I think we all know that. But yeah, that's essentially my Transformer the movie collection. I mean, I know that Zernizer, you have a different version. You have other versions as well, like from the UK, you have your Canadian versions and stuff like that, and that's really cool. But to me, I ended up getting them finally, and all that. And you know, and like you, when this originally came out from Family Home Entertainment onto VHS, I wanted to get it. I really did. I really did. So yeah, I really wanted to get it. But anyway, I thought I'd just do this little video, kind of a response to what you did, Sean. And hopefully, Sean, when you get the time, I know you're really invested in Doctor Who right now, but when you get the time, I hope, like everybody else that follows you, you will be able to finish up your Transformers series of videos. So, till then, guys, God bless, take care, comment below if you like. I'll talk to you all later. Video responses are appreciated too. Hey everyone. You know, it's hard to believe that this past Monday, August 8th, marked 30 years since Transformers the movie came out. And I remember almost like yesterday when I started seeing the advertisements for it and just begging my parents to take me to go see it just like any other kid. Unfortunately, my parents didn't want to take me, mostly due to the fact that I was 7 and I was still very hyperactive, and being a fan of Transformers, I don't think they probably thought I could handle, you know, standing still in the theater. And mostly I think after hearing maybe how violent it was, I don't think I could have handled it in the theater with that much violence. I did end up watching it anyway, as I've told you guys before. Long story short, my family would rent movies from a place called Neighborhood Video in Hayward, California. And when we went to Neighborhood, I remember one time seeing the poster out there, the very poster that, hold on, is right there. Basically that poster right there. I ended up seeing it over at Neighborhood, and they, of course, in the store they had a whiteboard with kind of marked down the middle, like the new releases were marked in red, and the upcoming releases, the coming soon, was marked in green. So again, long story short, my parents said that they would reserve the movie for me if I did good that week, and basically they lived up to the word. They ended up reserving it the day it came out. We ended up watching it as a family. I enjoyed it. You know, my family, mostly my mom, I think was a little shocked by the violence that was in it, and even a little bit of swearing. Well, mostly this one just had the swear word damn in it, so but yeah, I got to enjoy it, and ever since then, you know, I've watched every incarnation of it that I can think of, from VHS to television, which I did record it from. In fact, I remember in Fremont, living on Tomato Street, a little bit of an embarrassing story. We lived across the street from some neighbors we became friends with, the Mitchell family, and their son Kevin was, you know, like me, into Transformers. So, you know, one day I went with them to K Video, that's what it was called, K Video, and I ended up renting Transformers the movie from there, thanks to them. But the way it happened was very embarrassing. You know, like any kid, you know, you have a little bit of a temper tantrum, or a little bit of a temper or a fit if you don't get your way. Let's just say I caused a little bit of a scene that I shouldn't have done, and I do apologize to them. And I did apologize to them after that, and I still apologize for that years later. But they ended up letting me rent it because they didn't want any more of a scene to be caused. And then, fortunately, around this same time frame, KBHK, which is now KBCW, where they, you know, had acquired the airing license, or the broadcast license, to air Transformers. Well, at least they were one of the stations that did that. And they would at times, you know, dedicate 2 hours of the Saturday morning, 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock, to Transformers, and they would block out any other programming. And most of the time this meant that they were airing Transformers the movie. So I knew one time that they were doing it, and my mom said, "You do good in school, you know, and all this stuff, I'll let you record it." I did. I lived up to my end of the bargain. She let me record it, My sister just made it with my sisters, my oldest sister who liked to watch Beetlejuice at the time. So, yeah. So I ended up watching it on VHS, recording it off television. Basically, since that time, since I got to see it originally on VHS, when I first saw it the day it was released, I've seen it in every kind of format except theatrical, including Blu-ray. You know, I've seen it on DVD when I bought the Kid Rhino version. I've seen it on Blu-ray when I got this the Madman Entertainment version. You know, I bought the Kid Rhino home VHS of it, including the Here's a little bit of a funny story. When I lived in Topeka lived in Kansas with my dad, we would go to Westridge Mall a few times, and there was a Suncoast there. And I remember going to the Suncoast and seeing Transformers the movie there. So my grandma was kind enough to lend me the money to get it. And what I found out was the VHS that I ended up getting had the UK beginning of it on it. Yeah, this was the Rhino version that I got, the Rhino home video version of the movie I got originally had the UK intro on it, which was the Star Wars scrolling intro. So I ended up getting that, and then later on I got the VHS version, which was the special edition with everything, you know, that was kind of cut or edited out or muted, put back in. Then, like I said, I got the the Rhino home video DVD version of it. Then I ended up getting the 20th anniversary edition by Sony Music, along with the 20th anniversary edition of the soundtrack. And then, like I said, later on I ended up getting the Madman Entertainment, as well as I ended up getting the score of the soundtrack, and of course getting the LP versions of the soundtrack, the two versions of it, the LP version with the like the re-release of the original soundtrack as it was, and of course the 30th anniversary edition with the which had a black cover with the Autobots symbol on it. But speaking of soundtracks, long story short, I was going to a bar when I lived in Kansas. There was a Barnes & Noble across from the Hypermart, and in that Hypermart, in that Barnes & Noble, of course, you have CDs and all that, music and movies. I went to just browsing and went to the soundtracks area of the CDs, and lo and behold, they had Transformers the movie soundtrack. And I'm not talking the 20th anniversary edition, I'm talking the original version. I'm talking this version. Yeah, this was the version they had there, along with the original cover. So, yeah, I ended up getting that. So that was the first time I got the soundtrack, really. And then, of course, like I said, I ended up getting the 20th anniversary edition. I got the score later on, as well as I ended up getting the LPs that I think you guys pretty much know that I got when I did a package opening. So, yeah, Transformers the movie for me was just a huge, huge deal in my life. And now that I know that it's getting a re-release on DVD, on Blu-ray and DVD and digital HD, I'm really happy about it. I mean, it's getting a 4K transfer from what I understand, and that could lead to a 4K Ultra HD release too. So if you guys got 4K Ultra HD, go for that. I would. I'll probably just I don't know what I'm gonna do. I know I'm getting a copy of the movie thanks to Israel Decoy, who pre-ordered it for me and one for himself. So thank you, Israel Isaac, for doing that. So I am going to end up getting that very soon next month. So I'll end up watching it like that as well. So cannot wait to get that. So thank you again, Israel Decoy, for doing that. But overall, to me, for 30 years, Transformers the movie has been a big deal for me as a fan, because, like I said, I've watched it over 1,000,000 times according to my sisters. I've watched it so many times I know it like the back of my hand. Heck, I've even watched it when they've shown it on Discovery Family, when it was the Hub, and then later back to, and then it changed to Discovery Family. I've watched it on there when they would broadcast it. So I have seen it anytime in any kind of format or version they released it in. Heck, I've even seen it when they would break it up into a miniseries format. So there you go on that one. But yeah, just big impact. I mean, I ended up getting this guy right here because he was the part of the 20th anniversary edition. I've had this Optimus Prime for nearly 10 years now. So and I ended up getting him because of the 20th anniversary. And that's saying something. So overall though, just Transformers the movie has played a huge impact in my life, and I cannot wait to get the North American Blu-ray release. And that's all I can really say. So happy 30th anniversary to Transformers the movie, and here's to hoping for another 30, and people looking back now 30 years from now can say, yep, we grew up on that and that was good, you guys can check that out. So you know, maybe when we look at the 60th anniversary or the 50th anniversary, it'll be at a time where we'll be able to watch it on, we'll be able to have I don't know what we'll have technology wise to watch it, so we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, just my thoughts on Transformers the movie, 30th anniversary. Happy anniversary, Zara Nizarak. I'd like to hear your thoughts on it if you can ever get a chance to do it. And really, that's all I'm going to say, and I'll talk to y'all later.
Hey everyone, yeah, I'm off work. I've been off work for about 98 minutes now. Excuse me. Still trying to get over that cough. But yeah, I've been off for 90 minutes now, 98 minutes. But I thought I'd, come here and kind of talk about something that, not a lot of people uh, well, if you're not a fan of the franchise, you probably don't know much about this, but this is this year will mark the 30th anniversary of Transformers the movie. Now, 2 years ago, we celebrated the 30th anniversary of the entire franchise. This year, we celebrate the 30th anniversary of the movie that basically put the franchise that really put the franchise on the map and essentially changed the game of animation as we know it. Yeah, essentially changed the game of animation as we know it. And what I mean by that is the fact that in 1986, when this movie was released, August of 1986, excuse me, which will be this week. I mean, not this week, but will be this August, which will be 30 years this August. In August of 1986, this movie really changed a lot of things when it came to animation. You see, here you had this show that came on weekday afternoons and some places Saturday mornings, if not Sunday mornings. And true, you had the characters get shot and injured and everything, but that was about it. You never saw anything beyond that. And it was, it was wholesome. Well, it was not wholesome, but still, it was at a point that, you knew by the second season things were changing. Things were changing in a sense. Excuse me. And when the movie came out, it really was emphasized that things were changing or had changed. I mean, getting a PG rating for Transformers the movie was pretty much expected at that time because of what you saw on television. But nobody would have expected that PG rating at that time would emphasize the fact that the movie was going to do what the cartoon didn't. And that at the same time, it was going to change the game of animation as we knew it. Now, some might say, well, the game of animation was changed long before that. The game of animation was changed. Hold on. As I was saying, the game of animation was changed. Some might say that the game of animation was changed long before that, with movies like Heavy Metal that came out, Crooklyn, American Pop, Hey Good Looking, Fritz the Cat. And that is true. They did change the aspect of animation because those movies all were deemed adult-oriented movies. Those were R-rated movies. Now, when I'm talking about change the aspect of the game of animation, I'm talking about taking an animated series, a franchise, if you will, putting it on the big screen, giving it a PG rating, and doing what nobody expected you to do. You see, when the movie came out, nobody expected it to be as violent as it was. Nobody expected any of the G1 characters that we knew of to get killed off. Nobody knew that. Nobody knew within the first, 5, 6, 10 minutes, you were going to have Ironhide, Prowl, Brawn, Ratchet. You're going to have them all killed off in a massacre. No one knew. No one knew that in the first few minutes you would pretty much get an idea that this was not going to be your average Transformers cartoon. You didn't get that, in the first few minutes. You pretty much, if you went to the theater, if your parent took you to see the movie in the theater, your mother or father pretty much knew right off the bat, and then along with you, that this was not going to be the Transformers you knew. This was not going to be the Transformers that you watch Monday through Friday or on Saturdays or Sundays. It was not going to be that kind of Transformers. Instead, it was going to be a Transformers that was going to be more edgier, more risk-taking, and was going to do things no one else thought they would do. And it really changed the game of animation because now, pretty much if you were doing a movie based on an animated feature, you have to do it in a sense that even if it gets a PG rating, then nowadays, and even back then, the violence has to be toned down. If it's too violent, it's going to either get a PG-13 or R rating. Trivia here, a little bit of trivia. When I was listening to the commentary on the 20th anniversary DVD, they said, and I think they even say it here on the Blu-ray, they said that they had an option that basically Hasbro had an option with the MPAA. And that option was either a PG or R rating. Now, the original script had some elements in there that probably would have given the movie an R rating. But because this was Transformers and this was based on a franchise that kids like myself grew up watching, that would watch every day, Monday through Friday, Saturday, and Sundays, you had to do something to make sure parents would allow their kids to see that, or kids would be allowed to see it. And thus, the violence, as much as it was, was kind of not necessarily toned down, but certain scenes were altered, changed, whatnot, to basically show that, yeah, it was going to be violent, but it wasn't going to be on the level of violence that it originally was intended for. It wasn't going to be that violent. I mean, it was violent, don't get me wrong. I mean, the way characters were killed off and everything, but still, it wasn't as violent as the original script had intended for it to be. It wasn't that violent. So that was the only option they had. And, some might say, well, wasn't there a PG-13? I don't really know. I think PG-13 was kind of in its infancy at the time. In other words, PG-13 was just starting out. And something like Transformers, the movie itself could have gotten a PG-13 rating, but it didn't. And again, it's more along the lines of, this is something that, we as fans, I mean, come on, we as kids growing up, we didn't know about PG-13 movies. Most of the movies we grew up with in the early to mid 80s were PG movies that were nowadays PG-13. I mean, you take a look at Star Wars. Star Wars The Force Awakens came out. Just like Revenge of the Sith, it got a PG-13 rating. Why? Well, because even though Episode 1 and 2 tried to keep the tradition of keeping Star Wars PG oriented, they knew, and give George Lucas credit, he knew that if he was going to make the third episode, as violent as it was going to be, he had to give it a PG-13 rating. Thus, the reason why Force Awakens has a PG-13 rating, because even though they could have kept it, PG, they knew that with the tone that it had to go PG-13. Basically, if you want to look at it from a censor standpoint, it's a light PG-13. It's PG-13, but it's a light PG-13. It's more along the lines of TV PG LV. That's it. That's it. It's TV PG LV. That's it. Or TV PGV. That's it. That's all it is. That's all it is. And looking back at this movie, almost 30 years later now, 30 years being this August, like I was saying, we as kids growing up, I mean, I was 7 years old when this movie came out. So as a 7-year-old, I had no idea that it was a PG-13. I had no idea there was a PG-13 rating. I didn't. My sisters didn't even know it, because most of the movies we watched were PG rated. The only R-rated stuff that we had was what my dad rented for himself or for him and my mom. That was it. That's the only R-rated stuff we had. We didn't have any of the PG-13 stuff until later on. I mean, freaking Jaws was PG most of the way until the fourth movie. So, third or fourth movie. So basically, PG was it was basically PG was the equivalent of PG-13. PG-13, like I said, was still in its infancy, and it was tested out, I think, with the third or fourth Jaws movie. That was it. Nowadays, a lot of people look at PG-13 as being a lighthearted R at times, depending on the movie it gets a rating for. I mean, there is no doubt that if this movie came out today in theaters, it would get a PG-13 rating. There's no doubt about that in my mind. There's no doubt whatsoever in my mind it would get a PG-13 rating. But to be honest, when I look back at the 30 years of Transformers the movie, my family has said it best. My sisters have said it best. I'm somebody that basically... Hold on for a sec. I'm basically somebody that, according to my sisters, watched the movie so many times that I know every single line and scene by heart. So basically, for me, I wanted to see Transformers the movie in theaters. I really did. I wanted to see that movie in theaters, but because I was 7 years old and I had some personal issues going on, my parents wouldn't take me. And the reason they wouldn't take me is because as I see what my nephews here, they probably weren't sure how I was going to react in the theater, especially, I think, after what my dad had heard about it, or something. Basically, they weren't sure at 7 years old how I was going to react in the theater. Because of the violence that the movie had. And again, I'm not sure if my dad heard about it, or my mom heard about it from somebody, or what. But I don't think they thought I could probably handle it very well. Because like a lot of kids, to me, my main heroes, besides the Lord above, my main heroes as a kid, growing up, were a lot of the action character heroes I saw on television. Whether it was Hulk Hogan, whether it was the G.I. Joes, Optimus Prime, for example. So I guess in a sense they weren't sure how I would react. I mean, me being a Transformer fan then and now, I can only imagine how kids my age acted that the day they saw it in the theater. I can only imagine. Now, fortunately, even though I didn't get to see it in theaters, I kind of got caught up on it when I saw the third season. It's like, here you had this recap. I mean, basically, the first episode of season 3 starts with the ending of the freaking movie. So, I kind of got recapped basically through the third season before my family rented the movie on VHS. And again, I've said this before, I'll say it again. the way it was done is that we went into what was known as the neighborhood video in Hayward, California. And at any video store at that time, and even till the last video store shut down, and there's still some open out there, I remember they always had a white board or something like this with a line drawn down the middle, and on one side it's like it was a line drawn down the middle, and on one side you had new arrivals, and you had coming soon and the date that they were coming. So on one side you had what was already had just been released and what was coming and what day they were coming. And on this side, Transformers the movie was on there, and it said the date and everything. And then to even confirm that, out in front there was a poster that had it, and it said when it was coming. So my dad and mom had promised me that I guess if I had done good in school, or if I was good, had been a good boy, if you will, and everything, and listen to what they said. Basically, if I had done good for a week or so, it was the week it came out, or leading up to it, that they would reserve the movie on VHS from Neighborhood Video. And that's what they did. The day it came out, they called up. They said, "Do you got it?" They said, "Yes. Can you hold it?" And before I knew it, we got the movie. We sat down as a family in a living room just like this, a little smaller, and we watched it for the first time after dinner. And to say that what my parents probably found out about it, or heard about it, actually turned out to be very true. Because I think it took my mom by surprise at how violent it was, us and everything. And, that was just my obsession. And I guess you could say it became an obsession of mine, because any chance I got to see it, any chance I got to rent it, I would see it. I would watch it. Anytime it would come on later on, the years later, on television, I would watch it. I can remember, one thing I can remember is we lived in Fremont back in, I think it was, what was it? 88, 89. And this was at a time that Transformers was in the last, syndicated run. And they were doing basically a Saturday morning best of run for the series. And my mom had promised me that I could record Transformers the movie on Saturday morning. Now you might say to yourself, well, how is that possible? Well, at the time, KBHK, which is now KBCW, was one of the stations that was broadcasting Transformers the movie, or Transformers, the best of Transformers, on Saturday mornings. Well, like I said, I just had to let my dog out. But like I said, it was one of the stations that was broadcasting the best of Transformers on Saturday mornings. So, I remember watching it. I remember always reading the TV guide. I mean, I would get the TV guide out, literally, like this. I would get the TV guide out. Yeah, I think it was about this big or something. And I would look. I would look and I would look. And on the inside, getting to Saturday, it would usually be a 2-hour block of Transformers, or at least an hour block, or something. and it would say like 9:30. It would say 9 o'clock Transformers, 9:30 Transformers, da 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 da. Because basically they'd be showing, I think, about 2 hours worth of Transformers or something like that, or an hour's worth of Transformers and then something else. But every now and then, I would read the TV guide, and it would say 9 o'clock Transformers, and then as I looked at 9:30 for KBHK, nothing would be there. 10 o'clock, nothing would be there. 11 o'clock, nothing would be there. And it wouldn't be till 11 o'clock where it'd say something like either WCW Worldwide or WWF Superstars or, whatever, or WCW Pro, whatever, or something else. It wouldn't say anything else until 11 o'clock. And that mostly told me that they were showing, and that mostly gave me the idea that they were showing Transformers the movie at that time. Or they were showing one of the miniseries as a movie. Either it was Five Faces of Darkness, More Than Meets the Eye, along with 2 additional episodes, whatever. But it was mostly Transformers the movie. That pretty much gave me the indication. So when I saw that one week, we were living in Fremont, I asked my mom if I could record it. She said yes. And this was at a time, of course, Beetlejuice had come out with a series, and my sisters were into Beetlejuice, so, they wanted to watch it, but it was coming on at the same time Transformers was coming on. So, my mom made the promise, if I did good in school, stuff like that, and I got to record Transformers the movie. That VHS is in Kansas, in a box in Kansas, in a house that basically is no longer under any name in my dad's family's, my dad's side of the family. Basically, it's owned by new people who bought the property, long story short, and that's all I'm going to say. So I don't know if he's going to be able to get anything out of that house before they do something to it, because they're supposed to remodel it or something. I don't really know. All I do know is it's there, and it was still watchable the last time I saw it a long time ago. It's probably warped to heck now, so. But fortunately, while I was out there, I was able to get the Kid Rhino VHS. I was able to get a Kid Rhino VHS special edition. I got an original and a special edition. What was funny about the special edition was it was actually the UK version that I got. It was actually the UK version that I had gotten, the one that kind of had the Star Wars like scrolling at the beginning instead of the starring cast. So I got that instead, and I also had the VHS of the original beginning. Then later on, I got the DVD with the special edition, but this DVD special edition, which was again basically a DVD of the VHS, didn't have the Star Wars scroll. It was basically the original the original beginning, the starring cast and everything, along with an interview by Vince DiCola. And then several years later, when I was working for the Walmart in Lawrence, Kansas, that's when news had broke. Or at least this was a few months before, but it was around the time I was getting that job. That's when news broke that Sony was bringing out a 20th anniversary 2-disc DVD, with a full screen and widescreen editions. So I couldn't pass that up, and ironically, my job had it and the 20th anniversary of the soundtrack. So I got that as well as down the line, as well way a little before that. My late grandmother had gotten me the Transformers the movie soundtrack, the original audio CD, when she would occasionally go to Barnes and Noble. So, well, not Barnes and Noble, which was right next to the Hypermart in Topeka, Kansas. So she got me that, and I'm thank God for that. I'm very thankful and thank God that she was able to do that. So she got me that, and I really appreciated it. I really did. And she also kind of helped me, along with my dad, helped me get the VHS as well. So I was just really thankful for that. And again, years later, 2007 or 2006, I'm working for the Walmart in Lawrence, Kansas as an unloader. One of my first paychecks I get, or at least I get around that time, I'm able to get Transformers the Movie 20th Anniversary Edition. And then, last year, when I first got a Blu-ray, the Blu-ray here that's in my living room right now, I think it was last year. Yeah, it might have been last year. I can't remember. Or the year before. I don't remember. I got to look. I went online because I had seen this before. I went online on Amazon and basically got me Transformers the Movie on Blu-ray. Because like anybody else, we haven't gotten an official Blu-ray release here in North America. Hopefully that'll happen this year. I mean, this is the 30th anniversary. Paramount, I know they got the rights to this franchise. They need to either do it themselves or let Shout Factory or make a deal with Sony and say, okay, release a 30th anniversary Blu-ray. They got to do it. They got it. Because even though people like myself and Zara Nizarak have this on Blu-ray now, we need an official North American one. We really do. We really do. I don't think there's no question about that. I don't think it's no question about that. We need an official Blu-ray release here in North America for the 30th anniversary. There should be no excuses not to make it happen. I mean, the Record Store Day, basically along with Legacy and Volcano, released the soundtrack back. I mean, about a month or so ago, they released the soundtrack on a two record vinyl, on a 2 LP vinyl release that you saw in a previous video. So I don't think there should be any, and that was for the 30th anniversary of the movie. There should be no excuse for Paramount not to do that. There should be no excuse for them not to go to Shout Factory or to even Sony and say, do a 30th anniversary release. There should be no excuse. But besides that, all I could say is, looking back at Transformers the movie 30 years later, I'm still in awe every time I watch it. Even though I may know the movie from top to bottom, I'm still in awe every time. I'm still in awe about it. I still get, I guess you could say, goosebumps when I watch the intro, when I watch the beginning with the Transformers theme by Lion. It still gets me, because it's like, I cannot believe that one of the franchises I grew up on has a movie. It has an animated film, and got an animated film basically a few years after they came out. It still gets me at times to even fathom that. And I'm still reminded of when I first saw it. So I don't know what else to say. But that's just my thoughts on the 30th anniversary of Transformers the movie here in 2016. Let me know what you guys think about it. What are your memories looking back 30 years later? How do you feel about it? and I will talk to y'all later.
Hey guys, well, you probably noticed recently that I talked about my overall, gave you a 4K updated closer look at my Transformers DVD VHS collection, talked about it, my history with it, especially when it came to the movie, showing you that I have not just the VHS, the Kid Rhino VHS copy of it, but also the Madman Entertainment release of it, as well as the Shout Factory release of it, and the Rhino DVD and Sony BMG release of it as well. Both DVD versions, like I said, the Kid Rhino and the Sony BMG version. And like I said, I have the Shout Factory one as well, the Blu-ray version, and the, like I said, the Madman Entertainment version. I also showed you and let you know that I have the soundtrack on multiple formats. I have it on CD twice. I have the score on CD. I have two versions of the soundtrack on vinyl. The regular version that you would see when it first came out, now re-released, if you will, as well as a special 30th anniversary edition, which had two vinyls tracks on it. I had two vinyls containing the tracks of the soundtrack on them, I should say. And of course, I have it on my Spotify list as well. But I also have one more thing, and I think I briefly mentioned this. I also, VHS-wise, besides the Kid Rhino one, also have the recording. I also had, I don't have it anymore, but I also had a recording of the movie that I did off of KBHK on Saturday mornings when they went into that, I guess you could say, 5th season that they did with the Timmy and Power Master Prime puppet. I had that, but it's not the only thing I have of Transformers the movie. No, I actually have the comic adaptation, both versions. That's right, the Dreamwave one and the original Marvel Comics. Don't believe me? Well, let me show you. Okay guys, well, what you see before you is actually the Marvel adaptation, the original Marvel adaptation of the book, of the movie, as well as the Dreamwave. I think this is Dreamwave. No, IDW. Oh no, I stand corrected. IDW, yes, IDW. When they took over the Transformers license, actually did an adaptation of the movie, I think in time for the 30th anniversary a couple years ago. So this is basically, I think, when they took over license from Dreamwave. Oh no, it says 20th. When did IDW do? Oh, IDW had this back in 2007. Did they? Because it says the it has an advertisement. Yeah, 2006. So yeah, I have an advertisement for the movie. So obviously they had the license for this all the way back to 2006, and they've been renewing it. Yeah, so they've had, IDW's had the Transformers license, believe it or not, for about 14, 15 years now. That's unbelievable. But yeah, so I stand corrected in what I said in the intro when I said Dreamwave, because when I started recollecting and buying Transformer comics, the newer ones, Dreamwave was the primary publisher. And then later on, I think IDW, and I did hear about it, but I wasn't sure about, basically who had published this. I thought it was Dreamwave, but obviously not. So for 14, 15 years, I thought wrong. That was my fault. But yeah, IDW decided, I guess, as an introduction to, for fans, what I'm trying to say is I think IDW, what they did as an introduction to fans and to the fact that they had the license now to publish the book, they decided to start off, I guess, with the adaptation of the movie in time for the 20th anniversary edition that Sony BMG was distributing. So I think this is one of the first publications of Transformers. I could be wrong. But along with this, of course, we have the Marvel adaptation, because IDW, even though they did this version in 4 parts, Marvel did it in 3. Yeah, these are the 3 original comics of the adaptation of the movie. So here's the first issue right here. And it basically goes through, and it's basically drawn the same way as you would see traditional comics at that time. And oh man, you want to see how old you are? Look at that. Laser Tag. It's still around today, but it's under a different name, I think. Or it still has the same name. So yeah, this was the comic adaptation at the time. It basically is drawn the same way as you had like the regular Marvel comics. So yeah. And then look at that, Saturday morning cartoons. How about that? And I think Sean was right about one thing. Remember those? And this was at a time when you could see this is when they were promoting the new lineup. And you could see exactly which ones they had on there. In fact, they even have, who is that? Brainy Smurf? It looks like. That has a list of the shows they were putting on at that time. So you had Kissy Fur, Foofer, Alvin the Chipmunks, Gummy Bears, Smurfs, Kid Video, Punky Brewster, and One to Grow On. So yeah, pretty cool. And that had Michael J. Fox, I think, as the primary host. So that shows you how old these are. So yeah, you had that. I didn't show you the back because, yeah, reasons, as I've mentioned before. But that was the first issue. And then, of course, we have the second issue, which I've opened already. But when you seal these back up, they like to get resealed. So we have the second issue. And what they would do with these is they would name them, like, this one was just named Transformers the Movie. But when they would continue them, like this is part 2, they would just go by calling them by titles like Decepticons Attack. Because this one here carried like the first 30 minutes of the movie, or 45 minutes of it. And then this one like finished it off. Like Judgment Day as it's called. So yeah, it's just a bunch of advertising. And again, it's a good, decent continuation about it. You got the Spider-Man, Free the Cat Mystery. Remember when they did the crossover with Spider-Man and Captain Crunch? Remember that? And then, of course, you have this. More of these. So, yeah, it's not too bad. I mean, they do add a little bit more detail, like things I think that were originally cut out of the movie, they add in here. So. And I think they add stuff in, they cut stuff out, but. So yeah, it's pretty cool. And if you notice, if these tags look familiar to you, these are actually Mile High Comics. Yeah, milehighcomics.com is where I got them from. And I got them at a decent price. I was surprised at how affordable they were. I was thinking these might get expensive. No, they were a decent price, so I was happy about that. And speaking of comics, I still got to order issue 3 of Friendship in Disguise, and then eventually issue 2 of season 10 of MLP. And then, of course, we have the third part. And you're probably thinking, man, they only did 3? Well, that was the thing at the time. Marvel, anytime a comic book adapted a show or a movie, you know, even a miniseries, whatnot, they would always try to shorten it so that if you wanted to fully experience what they were adapting, it would encourage you to go see it, or search it out, if you will. So yeah, and this one's called The Final Battle. And again, that's what the one thing, you know, they would basically chapter them is what they would do. You know, they basically put them in chapters. So and yeah, they added a little bit more dialogue and stuff in there than from the movie, because like this is where I think Hot Rod asks the whereabouts of the Matrix, and Magnus says it's gone, but they added a little bit more dialogue in there. So obviously there was more planned from what we originally saw. And that's basically the thing about comic adaptations or novelizations at times. You know, the books are usually created during the time when the scripts are just being finalized or being looked over. So some stuff that gets into the adaptations, novel or comics, are left out of the movies or left out of the original presentation that you watch on the screen. So there we have issue 3, which wrapped up the Marvel adaptation. And then we have the IDW adaptation of the book, of the movie. A little bit more detail. And definitely a lot more nicer in artwork, I can tell you that. And you could tell that they took inspiration from the movie itself. You know, you can definitely see that, like the assault on the shuttle was a little bit more quicker. And again, you can tell that they took some inspiration from it. And then, of course, it ends in. And what they do, or what they did, is they would take the ending parts of the book, and they would spotlight like an upcoming comic or something like that, or spotlight a character. Like here, they spotlighted, I should say, Nightbeat. So they wouldn't give you like the full comic like, let's say, Marvel did, but basically they would give you a majority of it. They would end it probably around the same way they did, but they would give you a little additional, like, you know, they would give you a side story. Like, again, this had Nightbeat on it. And then here you have issue 2, and it gives you a recap of what's going on, or what's going to be happening, that is. So yeah, it's just basically a decent adaptation, and you know, that IDW did in time for the 20th anniversary. So, you know, really great artwork, and again, you could tell they took inspiration from the movie, if you will. You could tell they took inspiration from the movie and applied it to, you know, what they did here. And do we get another spotlight here? Yeah, we do. We get a spotlight, I think. Oh no, we get a sneak peek on Escalation. I think I have some issues on Escalation. Basically, it was one of the main stories that they were working on. Yeah. So I have some of the, I think, not just the regular issues, but I have some of the not just some of the issues, basically the trade paperbacks, the graphic novels, if you will. And then, of course, we have this one, which is issue 3. Again, just great adaptation, visually and everything that IDW allowed the artists to do. As I said, taking inspiration from the movie itself, you can see that. It's almost like basically if they felt, I mean, it's almost like all you would have to do is take screenshots and add word bubbles to them. So yeah, and then it ends there, and then an advertisement for the release of the the Sony release of the movie, which was on the Tuesday, the 7th of November in 2006. And then we get another sneak peek at Escalation, I think. Oh no, we just get some advertisements and a throwback to the original Marvel, which they did do. They actually Transformers Generations comic was basically the reissuing the Marvel stories, or at least their interpretation of them. And you got a release advertisement for the reissue of the classic G.I. Joes. And then, of course, we have issue 4. And I think the big difference that people will say that they enjoy between the two is the fact that they spread out the issue, they spread out their adaptation by an issue. It's what I'm trying to say is, what people would say is a big difference between Marvel's adaptation and the IDW one is IDW spread the adaptation of the movie by out by a couple of issues. So that was cool on their part. And again, just like with the Marvel adaptation, they add more dialogue and stuff, which I guess originally was supposed to be in the movie, but wasn't. Doing the final drafts and all that. But again, it feels like they took inspiration right from the movie, with the artwork and everything. Can't really, deny that or anything. So, it's pretty cool. And again, it feels like all you'd have to do, and this is a good image of Hot Rod going into becoming Rodimus. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, it looks like, again, it feels like all you would have to do is take a screenshot from the movie and add it in here. And then here you go. These are scenes right here. So straight from the movie. Well, not adapted from the movie. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Pretty cool. And then you get big screen Transformers to be revealed in Transformers the movie prequel comics. This, of course, was when they were doing stuff, and then we get a sneak peek of the other license that IDW got, and still has, I think, Star Trek The Next Generation. So yeah, it's pretty cool. So yeah, IDW and Marvel, the only big difference some people would say is the fact that Marvel's adaptation was short by 1 issue, while IDW went all 4 issues. They basically allowed the writers that were adapting the film to expand on it a lot more than Marvel did. So yeah, that's about it, guys. So let me know what you all think down below. Let me know if you have the comic adaptations of Transformers the movie 1986. Zara Nizarek, I'd like to hear if you do. And that's about it, guys. So till next time, God bless. Take care, stay safe. I'm out. So, this Sunday will mark 35 years officially since Transformers the movie came out in theaters. And I can tell you honestly, when I first heard about it coming to theaters, of course, I was 6 years old, going on 7, because I believe they were showing the little TV spots, the little TV teaser trailers, whatever you want to call them. months before, not months, but weeks before my birthday. They started showing them, I think, around June, late June, and throughout July. So you can only imagine, a young kid like me at 6 years old, going on 7, hearing about a movie that was coming to theaters a week after his birthday. And being a kid, being someone that watched Transformers since the beginning, I was excited. I was pumped. Unfortunately, I couldn't see it in theaters due to the fact that I had at the time ADHD, the attention deficit stuff, hyperactivity. Also was still dealing with the after effects of having Hirschsprung's disease, which resulted in me having a colostomy back when I was a baby. Colostomy bag, stuff like that. Anyway, I couldn't, like a lot of kids, like some of the people that were talking about this on Game Chasers last year or 2 years ago. Unfortunately, I, like many, couldn't see it in the theaters. I had to wait till it came out on VHS. But what was interesting is my mom and my dad said that they would reserve it. That, the moment it came out, they would call up and they would reserve a copy for us to rent and bring home and watch. And that's exactly what they did. But honestly, I was just so excited about the movie. It's like I wanted to see it on the big screen. I really did. I wanted to see it at the drive-in in Union City. Never had a chance. Never. Instead, like I said, I had to wait till VHS. Till we got on VHS about at the beginning of '87 or something. After that, I just would watch it time and time again. Any opportunity I would have to rent it, I would watch it. Even when it meant, even through embarrassing moments that I don't want to talk about right now. That would basically get me a chance to watch it as a kid. I would watch it. That's how much I loved this movie. How much I enjoyed watching this movie. It even got to a point that in I think it was 89, we were living on Tomorrow Street in Fremont, California. It was one of the second to last house on the right going towards the catwalk that would take you to Patterson Elementary School. And I remember one day, watching Transformers on a Saturday, of course. And I remember, I think there was an advertisement saying that the movie was going to be shown next week. And to confirm this, of course, one of the things I'd like to do at the time when I was a kid was read the TV guide to see when, mostly for Saturdays and all that, to see, when Transformers or any show that I liked watching would be on or something like that. And of course, being a Transformers fan, I wanted to see whether or not the movie was going to come on. And, to confirm my suspicions, I looked in the TV guide and I saw 9 to 11, that 2 hour, time frame was blocked off. And that usually would tell me or any kid at that time that was a Transformers fan that the movie was going to be shown. And it was. And my mom said that if I was good and I did good in school, that I would be able to record it. And I did. My sisters didn't like the fact that I got to record it because it came on at the time that they liked watching Beetlejuice. So, what are you going to do? But my mom promised I would be able to do it, and I did. And I still had that tape. Unfortunately, that tape now is probably trash. If not, definitely is trash, because the house where it was at originally was basically remodeled, and anything that was in there was thrown out, including the VHS tapes that me and my dad had that we had recorded stuff on. So those were gone. Those were completely, out of the picture now. But I had that thing for a long, long time. Even when I lived on my own, I took that tape with me. It's like, when my mom sent me back out to Kansas, I was like, if I'm taking one thing with me, it's going to be this VHS tape. And I did. I took it with me, if you will. So I took that with me when I moved to when I was sent back out to Kansas with my dad. But anyway, like I said, I would watch it so many times, reenact the scenes with my cousin, who was also a Transformers fan, so many times at our grandparents' when we got together. I just couldn't get enough of this movie. I couldn't. And as time went on, basically, I got, as time went on, I finally got to, own the movie officially. I'm trying to watch something here. Opportunity. My mom's home. She watched the Giants game, so I do apologize. But anyway, as time went on, I finally got an opportunity to own the movie. And what's interesting is I had 2 VHS copies. One I currently still have, and which is the special edition. It was by Kid Rhino Home Video, and had the special edition bought in yellow on top of the cover. And the other one was just, the regular poster cover that we were used to, used as the VHS cover. But the one with the the one that looked like a regular release, didn't say special edition or anything, surprisingly was the UK one. And I was like, what is this? I couldn't believe what I was seeing here. I was like, is this some kind of joke or something? But no, it was the UK one. And when I got the special edition, that was the regular one. So apparently Kid Rhino was able to get the hands on 2 copies, 2 different versions. The special edition with the Star Wars scroll, inspired scroll, and the movie, and the theatrical version, or mostly the theatrical version. And then later on, of course, got my hands on the DVD release by Kid Rhino, which I still have. And then, of course, when Sony did their thing in 2006, I got the 20th anniversary edition with the lithograph. And then, of course, later on, when Shout Factory did the 30th anniversary on Blu-ray, and mostly Steelbook Blu-ray, got that. And now I am on the verge of getting the 35th anniversary on 4K. And what's funny is I ordered basically for nothing. Basically ordered it with nothing because, with my gift cards for my birthday that helped out. I ordered it off Amazon, and basically that's scheduled to arrive the 23rd. And since I had a little extra money, I decided, well, let's see what happens if I get it directly from Shout Factory. Let's see if they come faster or they come around the same time. And right now it's expected to come on the 12th, but I wouldn't be surprised if it comes Monday or Tuesday. And looking and seeing that, it's almost like I think there's a miscommunication with Amazon and Shout Factory. Like, either Amazon doesn't have enough to distribute just yet, because when I looked again at where you order movies at or items at, it says in stock soon. So I'm wondering if they ran out and everything, and that's why I have to wait for that one to come later on. Now you might ask yourself, well, why would I have 2 copies? Well, it's simple. Same reason I have 2 copies of the Sonic Sat-AM Shout Factory box set. The complete series box set that Shout Factory released. One for viewing, one for collectors. There you go. But anyway, long story short, I've been able to, throughout all the years, I've been able to collect all these different formats and editions of Transformers, even getting them both on both on digital release through Amazon and Vudu, as well as have a MP4 digital version that came with the 30th anniversary edition several years ago. So yeah, I like I said, I just love this movie. I just love watching this movie. And in fact, when I would come back from work or even go to work on the bus, I would get my phone out. And I would go to Vudu or I'd go to Amazon and I would watch the movie. Just so I can have something to watch on the way to the bus stop in Patterson before staying on the bus or transferring to another bus to get to work. Anyway, like I said, just a big fan of it. And of course, as a lot of you have probably seen through some room tours, I have the poster, a reissued poster of it, and I have various formats or versions of the soundtrack. I have them on CD, the 20th anniversary edition, the regular edition by distributed by Volcano and Scotty Brothers. I have the instrumental edition as well, the instrumental edition that they released, the orchestrated version, the score. And then, of course, when I found out about them being on vinyl, of course I jumped at that, and I got two versions of it. I got the regular reissued vinyl version of it that looked basically what it looked like when it first originally came out back in '86, and then I got that special two vinyl collection, one that has a vinyl record that's red with representing the Autobots, and the other purple representing the Decepticons. So I have that. I have the original Marvel miniseries adaptation of it, and I have the Dreamwave edition of it as well. So yeah, I have a lot of stuff on Transformers the movie that you wouldn't believe. You would not believe. I even have, as soon as it got announced, I did what I could, and I got the current wave, most of the current, if not all of the current wave 1 of the Studio 86 line that they did. The only ones I still have to get when they come out are the ones like Retgar and Retgar and Sludge, if you will, or Slag, if you will. So those are the ones I still have to get eventually. But yeah, the thing is, like I said, getting back on track here, when I was a kid, basically when I found out this movie was happening, I couldn't be any more happier. And like I said, when we found out it was coming out to VHS, my parents called up, Neighborhood Video in Hayward, because that was our main rental place at the time before Blockbuster really became a big thing. And I think Blockbuster was just beginning at that time, and we hadn't really gotten into Blockbuster yet. But anyway, I remember, I've told the story before. When we went into Neighborhood Video, there would be this big, like whiteboard with all these different titles on there. One side would be, and it would be divided, like they would have a line drawn in between or in the middle of it, and on one side, in one coloring, they would have new arrivals, and on the other side it would say coming soon, and on that coming soon side, they had Transformers. And to confirm that even more so, the next time we went there, they had a poster of it as well on the window. And I'll never forget that. And my dad basically said, and my dad and my mom agreed that they would reserve it. They even talked to the people then. They said, hey, just give us a call. We'll reserve it for you. And that's what they did. And I remember that night we rented it. And I should say, what I'm trying to say is I remember that night, that day and night that we, got to call them up, or they called us back, said it was in. We went and got it, and took it home, ate dinner, sat down as a family, popped it in, and watched it. And I'll never forget, watching it for the first time. And as I've said before, I had this big old gray pillow, and I would always lay on the floor, put my head on the pillow, and watch film, or watch movies or shows with my family. And basically, I watched it, I enjoyed it until we got to certain scenes like Optimus dying, some of the Autobot characters I knew and Decepticon characters. The Optimus part was the only time I actually put my head under my pillow and kind of took a peek out a little bit, because I didn't, like any kid at that time, I didn't want to see the character die. I didn't want to believe this was happening, but it did. Thankfully, they brought him back in season 3, not just as a zombie to kill him off again in Dark Awakening, but in the Return of Optimus Prime later on, which they actually reconfigured, if you will, to take place after Dark Awakening, which is amazing, if you will. But yeah, I remember just like I said, just doing that and then watching the rest. And I think the people that was shocked the most watching that was my mom and my sisters, I think, because my sisters used to watch Jem and She-Ra. Like I would watch G.I. Joe and He-Man and all that, and Thundercats and Silverhawks and all that. But when it came to decisive, boy shows and girl shows and stuff, I would watch Transformers, G.I. Joe, He-Man. They would watch She-Ra, Jem, the original MLP. And they were kind of surprised by it. My dad, he was taken aback a little bit by it, but he was more accepting because, of course, he used to watch more horror-like movies or action, bloody action movies and all that. That was kind of his genre at times. His kick. But like I said, my sisters were surprised by it. My mom was surprised by it. But at that time, I don't think they should have been, because it was rated PG. And any time a movie back then was rated PG, that was basically the equivalent of basically of what like PG-13 is now. It's like anything goes, if you know what I mean. But yeah, it was shocking. It was surprising, and I don't think I don't think they ever thought something that I used to. Sorry about it. Like I said, I don't think they ever thought that it's something that I was watching since I was a kid, since I was 5, would be that violent. But again, this was a theatrical film. It was bridging the gap between season 2 and 3, and being a big screen film, you can get away with a little bit more than you could on regular television, and this movie proved that, if you will, in that to that extent. But overall, after that, like I said, just enjoyed watching it anytime it came on. Got more used to certain moments in it, and hopefully, come next month, I might be able to go and see it on the big screen, even though I'll own the 4K version. If I can get to see it on the big screen just once, I'll be happy, and I'll be back like checking off all the list of how I saw the movie. So, but yeah, I have fond memories of the movie, and it played a major part in my childhood, man. It really did. It didn't matter where we moved. If I can watch the movie in some capacity, when it came on, or we could rent it, I would. And I can't say any more than that. So anyway, though, guys, I just wanted to come on here, share you, kind of reshare once again for the 35th anniversary of the film, which happens this Sunday. My memories of Transformers the movie. Let me know what yours are down below, as well as in the live chat during the premiere. Thank you all for watching. Like the video. Peace. I'm out.